There's always been a few things with the gaming industry over the years that have always astounded me. One of these is how people can waste their lives on the multiplayer modes in the Call of Duty games, and the other is how the original Bulletstorm was a commercial failure. Developed by People Can Fly and Epic Games, it was hands down one of the best shooting games of 2011, and even after all these years, it still manages to be one of the most entertaining experiences for the genre. Taking on the role of Grayson Hunt, voiced by the awesome Steve Blum, it was something of a throwback to the first-person shooters from the mid to late 90s, featuring gratuitous levels of violence and a protagonist with a penchant for trash talking and using all manner of badass weaponry. Grayson Hunt is a bounty hunter on the run from the past, avoiding his former employee, the evil General Serrano. In the game's opening, while slightly intoxicated, Grayson ruins the lives of several hundred people as he crashes into Serrano's ship, causing his own ship to crash land on the hostile planet of Stygia. In the process, his best friend Ishii is turned into a cyborg as a means to save his life. Grayson's entire crew is killed in the crash or murdered by bandits, and Grayson and Ishii have to venture through an entire planet overrun with mutants, bandits, and hostile flora. The frequent cinematics contrast with the over-the-top action where the player is given the ability to creatively kill enemies through the use of the glorious skill shot system. And holy shit was this game glorious. It was a fantastic mix of the old and the new and had a surprisingly well-told story for the most part, dick jokes aside. Not to mention it had the awesome voice work of Steve Blum and Jennifer Hale.
Gee, feeling like I should make some sort of witty comment here.
Kick people into walls of spikes, off cliffs, or into exposed electrical wires, or just hold them in the air with your gravity-defying stasis boots before shooting them in the head. Now, I won't go into too much detail on the game, though I did review it a couple of years back, so if you want to know all that much about the gameplay, the positives, the negatives, and all that kind of stuff, then go watch my original video. What I guess this video is really about is everyone's favourite developers, Gearbox, doing what they do best and shamelessly trying to make more money by doing as little work as possible. And that's what they've done yet again, trying to milk every last possible ounce of milk they can out of Bulletstorm's fat, luscious tits with the Bulletstorm Full Clip Edition. This is the latest in a long line of so-called remasters that do little more than simply repackage a game in a mostly unaltered state as an excuse to sell it on the current generation of consoles. We saw it with Dead Island and Bioshock last year, and now we're seeing it again in 2017 with this, but you're probably wondering what do we get in this new edition? Well, to be honest, not all that much. You'd think the game would look better than the original version. Well, I guess it does, but it doesn't really look all that different. I mean, I think the lighting might be different and the textures are a little bit sharper, but the display options menu is as barren as it was in the original game. All you can adjust is the post-processing and texture quality, which is a little bit weak for a game released in 2017. Now, this isn't a bad thing anyway. I mean, the original game looked really good on PC, even for its time, and it still holds up nowadays. The only real big change to the game is the option to play through the entire game as Duke Nukem. Now, this is obviously just Gearbox again milking those aforementioned tits because they're the ones that own the Duke Nukem license.
It's time to kick ass and chew bubble gum, and I'm all out of gum.
Basically, all this does is replace Grayson Hunt throughout the entire game with Duke Nukem. I'm not sure if the Duke Nukem model was ironically made to look like it was created in 2011, but that's what I think it looks like anyway. Maybe to fit in with the other character models, or maybe they just got lazy.
Wow, nicely done.
Yeah? Fuck you!
The voice acting when you're playing as Duke is obviously changed to suit him, but the other characters in the game still refer to him as Grayson, something he points out during his responses in the earlier segments of the game, but sort of gives up doing later on. It is kind of funny hearing him keep going on about how he's not even supposed to be in the game. It's a really neat little meta way of approaching his inclusion in a completely different franchise. Likewise, Duke is often going to forget the names of the other characters and is unaware of certain plot elements as well. Other than that, it's a simple asset flip.
I'm not even supposed to be in this flashback.
I mean, if you're expecting any of Duke's weapons to be usable, like the Ripper Cannon, the Shrink Ray, etc., then you're going to be disappointed. Gearbox didn't include any of that stuff because that actually would have been a good idea. If you can overlook the horrible lip syncing for his character model, there is a bit of novelty to be had here. I mean, Grayson Hunt is very similar to Duke in a lot of ways, from the way he has total disregard for most other people and his love for booze. And hearing Duke work some of his dialogue into certain cinematics is actually pretty funny.
More visitors!
Let's give them a warm welcome.
I'd obviously suggest people who haven't played Bulletstorm before don't play as Duke for their first time playthrough, mostly because Steve Blum's voice work in this game is amazing and one of the things that made the original game so memorable. What else can I say about the Full Clip Edition? Well, to be honest, not a great deal. If there's anything else new they've added, well, it sure went over my head. It's not a bad thing really, unless you already own the original game, in which point there's not really any goddamn reason to pick this thing up. this full clip edition isn't offered to people who own the original game, which was the case with the Bioshock remaster. I mean, it's not even being offered at a reduced price, which is total bullshit. As I said too, visually it looks practically the same as the original version, unless you're looking at the whole thing with a microscope, and the gameplay is identical as well. $40 for the whole thing too. $40 US is just way too high as well, considering the original can be picked up for peanuts nowadays. If the price was half that, it might be worth it, but $40 is just way too high. The only real positive side I can see to this remaster is that it's going to attract more people to the game, and maybe allow people Can Fly to work on the much needed sequel. The game does end on a cliffhanger ending, which ultimately never got resolved because the game wasn't successful enough to warrant a follow-up. Maybe if the remaster gets enough attention, it might actually allow for this to finally happen, and I know I'm not the only person who'd like to see that come to fruition. Any excuse for my boy Steve Bloom to voice a protagonist in an FPS game is fine by me. Problem is, I think Gearbox will gain more notoriety for their business practices than the fact they're trying to bring Bulletstorm to a new generation of gamers, so it might do more harm than good. The Duke Nukem World Tour, for instance, could have also been another way to garner more interest towards the Duke Nukem franchise, but people just seem to lament the removal of the Duke Nukem Megaton Edition, more than they celebrated the introduction of the World Tour, so shit, who knows. Here's the 411 folks. If you didn't play the original Bulletstorm, I'd say check this one out. It's not a perfect game and it's a little bit inconsistent in terms of the difficulty and the design of certain areas, but when all the elements come together, it's one of the most creatively violent games ever made and has some superb combat. Be patient with the game. I'd say the first quarter of it has a really slow pace, but about halfway in, when you've got most of the weapons, it really starts to kick all kinds of ass. To top it all off, it has an interesting story with well voice acted characters that you actually care about. And Sonny Jim, if you have played Bulletstorm and already own the original, well then it should be obvious what you have to do here. Why they're remastering a game from 2011 is beyond me anyway. It's not even that long ago. I mean, I can still remember what I had for lunch in 2011. It's that recent. If you fall into the latter category, I'd say save your money for something worthwhile. There's far better ways to spend $40 than on a game you've literally already played. Unless the notion of playing as Duke Nukem is so great that you can't contain yourself. And look, I can give you my PayPal details if you really want to throw $40 away.
He's down!
But he ain't dead. It's a murder party starring the king, baby.